Are they going to do this? They're going to have to do this.
I think
They are going to take Kenny Pickett, I believe, 6th overall in the draft. They'll take Kenny Pickett, and if not Malik Willis, which I can almost talk myself into only from the vantage point of the fact that they all know they're getting fired. But because as much as I love Neil Aquanu, all the guys we discussed, Cross, those are the guys you would want to take in that spot. It's like, does that really in any way change things for them? Is it not just better to just go and take a player who is probably bad and hope for the best?
I suppose the one question is, because there is still a quarterback out there in Jimmy Garoppolo who potentially will get moved. It's got to be a question mark. They've got to have the discussion in the front office in Carolina as to, because that to me is what it comes down to. You know, can we trade for a Jimmy Garoppolo, or are we essentially backed into a position where we have to take Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis? Now, I know what I do, and I'm pretty sure I know what you do, but I think what you said first of all there, I think is what they will end up doing. I think they'll take a quarterback. And if they take Kenny Pickett, then the whole game is gone, mate. The whole game is gone. But
they won't see out the year.
No, 100% not.
Because you draft Kenny Pickett because you're saying he can operate the system year one. The only way you talk David Tepper into keeping your job in year one is taking Malik Willis and bringing David Tepper down to practice to watch him run in the open field and fizz balls to the second level, and you just do a wink like, hey, looks pretty special, right? And you buy, but he's not ready yet, David. You know, you have to give us 8 weeks here.
Yeah.
That's the only way you buy yourself time. It's just that their roster construction on the offensive side of the ball is so bad that they've now backed themselves into a corner where they know, the reason they've not done a Garoppolo deal is they know they will stink with Jimmy Garoppolo. They need someone who can sprinkle magic dust on an offense. That's why they went big game hunting for all the big game players, because the rest of the offensive line in particular is so bad that you have to be magic to play behind that thing.
Yeah.
And to think one of those guys will do that for you in year one is crackers, but that's what they've backed themselves into.
I love your Malik Willis point about saying to Tepper, look, you know, we're give us another year because this is going to be good. But the flip side of that is Tepper is not stupid, and he will see, you know, a Kyle Hamilton having the Javon Holland kind of impact. He will see a Charles Cross having the kind of impact that Rashawn Slater, you know, had a year ago, and think, we could have had those guys. Except I've got a quarterback who's now on the bench, a long way away from playing, and Sam Darnold's just thrown another pick. It's like, you know, that's the end of the line, I think. So I personally would do anything but draft Kenny Pickett. So I would be inquiring heavily about the situation with Garoppolo, talking to doctors about that shoulder, trying to work out whether or not we can get a deal, because I just do not want to find myself in a position where I have to draft Kenny Pickett 6th overall. Especially with so many good players still on the board, a Hamilton, a Stingley, a Aquanu, a Neal, a Cross, you know, whoever, Jordan Davis, whatever.
And the thing that's wild about it is there cannot be a single person who's evaluated players, amateur person on his couch just watching Saturdays, all the way up to their entire scouting department, who can tell me there's more than a slither of paper between whoever they think is the best and whoever will be available at the foot of the first round, if not the start of the second round. The value play in this draft at quarterback, and this will please Cy, is Carson Strong. Is saying, let's hope the knee holds up. Let's hope he learns some things in terms of pocket mobility, and let's hope for the best in the third round, because that's probably where you'll get him because of the medical.
Yeah.
The top guy for me would be Malik Willis, and I would do that gamble in the first round if I was running a team. But the value play is for them to just go and get a lineman and then go and hope they can get Carson Strong in the third round and see what happens.
But also, I think you're going to find yourself in a situation where if you do not take a quarterback at 6, I can't think that they won't be in a situation where there won't be 2 or 3 quarterbacks still on the board. I can't see other teams talking themselves into below par passes just because they need to, when ultimately, if they end up taking Matt Corral at 12 or at, you know, you're putting yourself firmly in the hot seat in terms of your job security. I know there's it's a quarterback league, and if you haven't got one, you haven't got one. But I don't know. Did Carolina pick early in the second round? I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah.
The thing that's funny about it too is even the idea of drafting a QB just to save your job, which is basically what they would be doing, is even that mythical scenario we came up with where they're at practice and they're going to Tepper, hey, look, this guy, you know, he's got some talent, but we're gonna have to Trey Lance this thing for a season. He's gonna be there rubbing his chin, going, well, I could give you this guy if he looks talented, or I could call Bruce Arians or Sean Payton, and I'm one of the richest humans alive, and make them a Godfather offer who I know can develop quarterbacks, not you, Matt Rule.
Yeah.
And Ben McAdoo, why is he stood here on the sideline with us?
Yeah, exactly. But like, you know, if you wait into the early part of the second round, whatever you think of Sam Howell or whatever you think of, you know, Corral or whatever you think of Desmond Ridder, for example, who now feels like he might be going in the first round, you know, if they're there, then you take one at that point. It's far less of a risk, and you've got yourself a really good player like a Carl Hamilton, like a Derek Stingley, like an Iquanu, like an Evan Neal, like a Jermaine Johnson, or whoever it is at that point that you can plug in at day one and have a real impact. Oh, and you've also, you know, got a quarterback that you can compete with against Sam Darnold in training camp and potentially push them out. I just, because there's, like you said, there's such a thin line. But whatever you think about Kenny Pickett, if you think he's the number one guy, the gap between Pickett at 1 and whoever you have at 6, Corral, Ridder, Strott, whatever, the gap isn't that big. And the only reason that Carson Strong isn't talked about, like you said, is the medical. And as you mentioned with Stingley, we don't have access to that medical information, and therefore, you know, but it feels like nobody's talking about him in the first round. So it feels like agents are talking that, you know, the knee isn't amazing, but he didn't have to go back. I thought it was interesting that he didn't have to go back for extra checks. You know, you talk about Damone Clark, the LSU linebacker who's had to have the spinal surgery. You know, Strong I haven't heard, it hasn't, you know, certainly hasn't come out that he's had to go back and have, you know, extra work done, extra tests, any sort of further surgery. So I just can't see a scenario where 6 quarterbacks go before Carolina pick again in the second round. And
I did just remember they traded the second for Darnold. Remember, they gave up a second for Darnold, so it'll be the third. But the third, like you said, the math does not add up to think. So Atlanta's really gonna at some point say, let's take Sam Howell rather than just play Marcus Mariota free and get into a better quarterback class next. It's just not gonna happen. Yeah. They would all consider it if they had a late second round pick, like a second one or a third round pick. That's when you go, let's take a punt. That's where you do the Washington thing of taking Kirk Cousins after you took RG3, because who knows who's good in this league, right?
Yeah.
Why you would feel the need to do it at 6th overall when you cannot possibly believe it. You have not watched football if you watch Kenny Pickett and say, this guy is changing our fortunes in year 1. Maybe something happens with Kenny Pickett. He's one of these magical fellows where we can't see what's inside them, and he'll have this amazing career and, you know, go on to be great. It's not happening in year 1. He is so far away in terms of processing and anticipation. It's not happening in that first year. So I just,
maybe he'll do it in the 6th year like he did at Pittsburgh.